don't think Dead by Daylight is truly a team game for survivors, even though many people say it is. The game encourages individual success just as much as teamwork. Many survivor players don't actually work together. Instead, they focus on doing generators, hiding, and escaping for themselves. Meanwhile, the killer has to spend the entire match searching for survivors across the map. The matchmaking system, MMR, also doesn't encourage the kind of teamwork people talk about. As a killer, I try to play fairly and don't want to bully survivors or make the game miserable for anyone. But it can be frustrating when survivors spend most of the match hiding or avoiding interaction while generators are completed. I also don't understand why some content creators celebrate videos with titles like 3 hours of looping killers for 5 gens. Looping is a legitimate skill in Dead by Daylight, but some of these videos seem more focused on humiliating or frustrating the killer than simply trying to win the match. In my opinion, both sides should be able to enjoy the game. Survivors should have opportunities to work together, and killers should have meaningful chases instead of spending most of the match looking for hidden survivors. Dead by Daylight is at its best when both sides are actively interacting with each other and everyone has a chance to have fun. I'm concerned that Dead by Daylight might not last much longer on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, or Nintendo Switch because of the upcoming graphics update. I do believe the game needs a visual upgrade, but I am not sure it needs something this advanced to become the new base version of the game. From what the developers have shown, they are completely overhauling many aspects of Dead by Daylight, including character models, hair, skeletons, animations, and textures. They are also introducing dynamic weather and more realistic sound design. While these improvements look impressive, I think they could also create several problems for both players and the community. My biggest concern is system performance. I hope the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X can run the update smoothly, but I worry about older platforms such as PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. Even PC players, especially content creators, may need hardware upgrades. Running a game is one thing, but running a game while streaming or recording content requires significantly more resources. Dead by Daylight already uses a considerable amount of CPU and GPU power, so this update could make it even more demanding for creators. Another concern is that Dead by Daylight. As a disabled player, I think Dead by Daylight could benefit from a killer perk that allows limited remote hooking, especially as an accessibility option. My idea is a Scourge Hook perk that lets you remotely hook survivors onto Scourge hooks. I've liked this concept since before the last anniversary event. Even when I was mostly a survivor main, I thought it was an interesting idea. One reason is that Scourge Hook perks can be extremely dependent on map RNG. If you've ever loaded into Swamp while running a Scourge Hook build, you know how frustrating it can be when the hooks spawn in bad locations. A perk like this would make Scourge Hook builds more consistent and could have great synergy with perks like Pain Resonance and Jagged Compass. My rough idea is: start the trial with 4 tokens. Each survivor can only be remotely hooked once. While carrying a survivor, look at a Scourge Hook and press the active ability button to send them directly to that hook. Consumes 1 token. One of the biggest reasons some killer players give for slugging is that carrying survivors to hooks takes time and can be disrupted by body blocks, flashlight saves, or hook sabotages. A perk like this would encourage hooking instead of leaving survivors on the ground. The killer would still have to down and pick up the survivor first. The perk would simply skip the carrying process by allowing the killer to target a Scourge Hook and remotely hook the survivor. Because each survivor could only be affected once, there would also be an interesting strategic choice. Do you use the perk on a survivor's first hook state, or save it for later? It could be especially useful with Pain Resonance for players who prefer to save their Scourge Hook value for a second hook state. I'm not completely set on the exact numbers, but I think 4 total uses, with a limit of 1 use per survivor, would be fair. It would make Scourge Hook perks more reliable, encourage hooking over slugging, and potentially help disabled players who struggle with the carrying portion of killer gameplay. What do you think? Washington, Republican senators stopped short of using their political leverage to kill President Trump's $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund, approving a critical immigration enforcement bill without adding language reining in the controversial program. Passage of the $70 billion package funding immigration and customs enforcement and the Border Patrol through the end of Trump's second term followed a more than 19-hour session of amendment votes and intra-party negotiations. The GOP-backed measure passed 52 to 47 shortly before 5 a.m., with Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska voting with Democrats against the bill. The overnight vote-a-rama allowed GOP senators in competitive election fights this fall, including Susan Collins of Maine, Dan Sullivan of Alaska, John Husted of Ohio, and Ashley Moody of Florida, to register their objections to the fund without derailing a bill that is a priority for the party. Passage of any new restrictions on the fund likely would have sparked a public fight with the president that could have battered their campaigns. The House is expected to take up the immigration enforcement measure next week. Lawmakers of both parties objected to the Trump fund over concerns that taxpayer money would be used to compensate the president's allies and could reward people who had assaulted police officers who defended the Capitol on January 6th, 2021, as it was overrun by a mob of Trump supporters. Republicans were particularly incensed because the fund and an agreement to end audits of Trump's taxes were announced just as the president helped to end the Senate careers of two GOP lawmakers he saw as insufficiently loyal, Senators Bill Cassidy of Louisiana and John Cornyn of Texas. After weeks of wrangling and a contentious meeting between acting Attorney General Todd Blanche and GOP senators, Blanche said Tuesday the administration was killing the fund. But Trump didn't echo that commitment, and Democrats and many Republicans said they wanted the end of the fund written into law, fearing it could be revived later. Republicans facing tough elections were hoping to use their votes for some of the amendments to burn. Employers added 172,000 jobs in May, blowing past analyst forecasts as the labor market continued to show strength despite rising inflation and concerns about slowing economic growth. By the numbers, economists polled by FactSet predicted that the economy would gain 105,000 jobs in May. The latest employment data follows 2 months of strong payroll gains. The Labor Department on Friday also revised payroll gains up for both March and April, bringing the totals up to 214,000 and 179,000, respectively. The unemployment rate in May was 4.3%, unchanged from April. Leisure and hospitality drove the bulk of the job growth, with the sector adding 70,000 jobs, higher than the average monthly gain of 14,000 over the last year. Local government also saw solid gains, with employment rising by 55,000. Healthcare, which has been the leading sector for employment growth in past reports, added 35,000 jobs in May. The job market continued to expand in May despite rising price pressures from the Iran war. Inflation is now at the highest level in almost 3 years as the conflict in the Middle East squeezes global energy supplies. What experts are saying. President Donald Trump has revealed the lineup for a rally celebrating the nation's 250th anniversary days after a slew of musicians pulled out of performing at a Freedom 250 multi-day concert event. In a June 4th social media post, Trump announced country singer Lee Greenwood will sing his 1984 hit, God Bless the USA, at the June 24th rally before introducing the headlining act, the president himself. We don't want singers with no talent, but big fees to put you to sleep. We've told them all to stay home. All we want is you, me, a few speakers, and the greatest music ever played, the same music you have listened to for years. Trump wrote, "Start the day smarter. Get all the news you need in your inbox each morning." Freedom 250, the quasi-government group Trump formed to mark America's 250th birthday, was originally planning a 16-day concert series as part of an event coined the Great America State Fair. But last week, a slew of musicians backed out of performing, with several citing the event's perceived political affiliation and confusion around what they signed up for. As a result, Trump decided to nix the performances and instead give a speech himself, a White House official previously confirmed. The rally is scheduled for June 24th.
Danielle Alvarez, a spokesperson for Freedom 250, also confirmed in a statement to USA Today that Trump will be kicking off the Great American State Fair at the June 24th event. Here's what to know, including the rally lineup. Lee Greenwood to perform at Freedom 250 rally with Trump as headliner. Although the president is positioning the June 24th event as a rally rather than a concert, several musical acts are part of the lineup, according to Trump's Truth Social post. In addition to Greenwood, opera singer Christopher Macchio will perform before Trump's headlining speech. The U.S. Army Band, Armed Forces Choir, U.S. Marine Band, and Joint Armed Forces Chorus will perform as well, Trump said. Greenwood called the opportunity a tremendous honor in a statement. The 83-year-old has been a longtime Trump ally, having performed at his past campaign rallies and even selling a Bible alongside the president in 2021. Similarly, Macchio performed at Trump's inauguration in 2025. What happened to Freedom 250's Great American State Fair? The original 16-day concert series was tied to Freedom 250's Great American State Fair. While the concerts are now replaced with Trump's headlining speech, the rest of the fair is still happening as scheduled, according to Freedom 250's website. The event will feature pavilions representing 56 states and territories, specialty exhibits, and classic fair attractions. The fair will be held daily from June 25th to July 10th on the National Mall, according to Freedom 250's website. As for the now canceled performances, a lineup of performers was initially revealed on May 27th. But within hours, a slew of acts dropped out of the event. Country musician Martina McBride wrote on X that she was misled into believing that she would be performing at a nonpartisan event. I've been blessed with the opportunity to be a voice for those who have felt like they didn't have one. It greatly upsets me that any fan who has been moved by my music may now feel like I'm abandoning the meaning behind those songs. I assure you, that is not the case, she wrote. Bret Michaels attributed his exit to the divisive nature of the event. Unfortunately, what was presented to us as a celebration of our country has evolved into something much more divisive than what I agreed to be a part of, he wrote in a lengthy Instagram post. In response, Trump announced on May 30th that he was replacing the shows with a rally headlined by the president himself. Contributing, Saman Shafiq, Mike Snyder. Melina Khan is a national trending reporter for USA Today. Keep up with her on
Reports of U.S. military activity at Ben Gurion Airport fuel speculation about Iran. Recent reports and social media posts have fueled speculation that a broader conflict involving Iran could be on the horizon, pointing to increased U.S. military activity at Israel's main international airport. According to the claims, satellite imagery appears to show dozens of U.S. Air Force refueling aircraft positioned at Ben Gurion Airport. Some observers have estimated that between 60 and 100 tanker aircraft have been present at various times, occupying a significant portion of the airport's available space. Video footage circulating online also appears to show U.S. refueling aircraft and other military assets operating from the airport, leading some commentators to describe the facility as functioning as a temporary military hub in addition to its normal civilian role. Critics argue that the presence of military aircraft at an active civilian airport raises questions about the use of civilian infrastructure for military purposes. Commercial flights have reportedly continued operating from the airport while military aircraft remain present. Supporters of the theory that military action may be forthcoming point to reports, flight tracking data, and satellite imagery that they believe indicate a sustained U.S. military buildup in the region despite ongoing ceasefire efforts. Some analysts and commentators have suggested that the continued deployment of tanker aircraft could support future military operations if tensions were to escalate. However, the presence of refueling aircraft alone does not necessarily indicate that military action is imminent. Tankers are frequently deployed to support a wide range of operations, including deterrence missions, exercises, logistics, and contingency planning. As tensions between Israel and Iran continue, observers are closely monitoring military movements throughout the region for signs of any significant change in the security situation. Major stories making headlines. Scientists bake sourdough using ancient microbes. Scientists have reportedly created sourdough bread using yeast and microbes recovered from the remains of an ancient mummy. According to reports, the mummy had been preserved for more than 5,000 years. Researchers isolated microorganisms associated with the remains and used them to create a sourdough starter. The scientists later described the resulting bread as very, very good and even tasted it themselves. Researchers are reportedly exploring other potential uses for the ancient microorganisms, including brewing beer. The unusual experiment has generated significant public reaction, with many people questioning whether some ancient materials are better left undisturbed. Flesh-eating screwworm confirmed in South Texas. Agricultural officials have confirmed the presence of flesh-eating screwworms in South Texas, raising concerns among ranchers and livestock producers. The screwworm, which was eradicated from the United States decades ago, poses a serious threat to livestock because its larvae feed on living tissue. Federal officials have stated that the situation has been contained and that the nation's food supply remains safe. However, some Texas officials and agricultural groups are calling for additional action, warning that a larger outbreak could have severe economic consequences for livestock producers. Farmers have urged federal authorities to closely monitor the situation and take aggressive measures to prevent further spread. Iran suspends negotiations amid regional tensions. Reports indicate that Iran has suspended negotiations with the United States amid escalating regional tensions. The announcement comes as fighting and military activity in Lebanon continue to draw international attention. Iranian officials have previously linked broader diplomatic progress to developments in Lebanon and the wider region. At the same time, Israeli military operations in Lebanon have expanded, increasing concerns about regional stability and the possibility of further escalation. The developments have complicated diplomatic efforts and added uncertainty to ongoing discussions involving multiple countries. As events continue to unfold, governments throughout the region are closely monitoring the situation and assessing the potential impact on future. People keep saying Dead by Daylight should add a ranked mode, but I don't think they should. In most games, adding a ranked mode doesn't make casual matches less competitive. Instead, people use casual queues as practice for ranked. Survivors would still bring the strongest builds available, and killers would still bring their best loadouts. The sweating wouldn't disappear, it would just spread into both modes. I also think a ranked mode would push the community toward a more competitive mindset overall. Killers would feel more pressure to tunnel and camp for wins, while survivors would be forced to stay on generators and play as efficiently as possible. Matches would become more focused on optimization than fun. The result would likely be a bigger divide in the player base. Players who enjoy experimenting, goofing around, or playing casually would feel increasingly pushed out by the pressure to perform. Dead by Daylight has always been at its best when it balances competition with unpredictability, and a ranked mode risks tipping that balance too far in one direction. If people want a more competitive Dead by Daylight experience, that's a valid opinion. I just don't think it's what most players are looking for, and I believe a ranked mode would ultimately make the game feel more sweaty and less welcoming for everyone else.